I yelled at my son today, and it wasn't my proudest moment. And you know what I did immediately after? I watched his face fall, and I saw his feelings get hurt. And my wife stepped in to comfort him while I stood there feeling like an idiot. I apologized to him, and I owned it. But even after that, I spent the rest of the day beating myself up, telling myself that I should know better at 49. I'm still screwing this up. And I'm supposed to be the grown up who has it together. Does that sound familiar? Well, here's the thing. I can extend grace to strangers who cut me off in traffic, to a friend who cancels plans at the last minute, and even to my kids when they mess up. In this instance, I didn't. But to myself, I hold to an impossible standard that no human can meet. And today we're talking about grace. Not the fluffy Instagram quote version, the real, messy, necessary kind that keeps you from burning out or hating yourself every time you're not perfect. Because, spoiler alert, you're never going to be perfect, and that's actually okay. Now, what is grace? Like, really? What grace is, it's not permission to quit or coast. It's not about lowering standards or giving up. It's acknowledging you're human, that you have limits, bad days, and a brain that doesn't always cooperate, especially with ADHD. Now, choosing self-compassion over self-punishment. Treating yourself like you treat someone you care about. Creating space to try again. Grace is what lets you get back up without the shame spiral. Now, what grace is not? Making excuses, avoiding accountability, being lazy or apathetic, letting yourself off the hook for harm that you've caused. See, that's where repair comes in. And why this all matters? See, when you're constantly beating yourself up, you're spending energy on shame instead of solutions. Self-criticism doesn't motivate, it paralyzes. And grace creates the psychological safety you need to actually grow and to change. Now, grace is the gap between who you are today and who you're trying to become, and choosing not to punish yourself for living in that gap. That's what grace is to me. And why we're so hard on ourselves, it's what I think of as the perfectionism trap. Like, we've been conditioned to believe that being hard on yourself equals being responsible. If I'm not tough on myself, I'll get lazy. Well, that's not how it works. Perfectionism is often a trauma response or survival strategy from childhood. Add the ADHD layer on that. Executive dysfunction means you know what you should do, but can't always execute. And the gap between intention and action feels like moral failure. And it's not. Rejection sensitivity dysphoria, RSD, makes criticism, especially self-criticism, feel catastrophic. You've likely spent years being told you're not trying hard enough or you're not trying too much. Compound that with the parenting layer. You're hyper aware of your mistakes because you don't want to repeat patterns or hurt your kids. And every misstep feels like proof you're failing at the most important job. Social media and comparison culture makes it worse. Everyone else looks like they have it together. And me, being a two-era dad, like, I became a dad at 18 and I didn't know what I was doing. I made a lot of mistakes and I carried guilt for years. Now I'm parenting again in my 40s, and guess what? I'm still making mistakes, just different ones, but mistakes all the same. Now, the difference now is I'm learning to give myself grace. Grace for being a work in progress. Now, the cost of no grace. What happens when you don't give yourself grace? Burnout. You can't sustain constant self-punishment. Paralysis. Fear of messing up keeps you from trying. Resentment. You start resenting the people or the responsibilities that you care about. You also model in harsh self-talk for your kids. They learn to treat themselves the same way. Relationship strain. When you're in a shame spiral, you're not present or connected. Here's an example. After my ADHD diagnosis, I look back over the years and the failures and the jobs I didn't finish and relationships that I tanked and promises I didn't keep. And I had a choice. I could drown in shame, or I could give myself grace for doing the best I could with an undiagnosed brain difference. Grace didn't erase the past, but it let me stop punishing myself for it. Now, what helps me and what I think would help you is something I call the grace check-in. When you catch yourself spiraling or being harsh, pause and ask these 3 questions. 1, would you say this to a friend? If the answer is no, you're being too hard on yourself. Reframe it. What would you say to someone you care about in this situation? Number 2, What's one thing I did right today? Even on bad days, there's something you got out of bed, you fed your kids, you showed up. Now in the ADHD brain, we fixate on what went wrong, and this forces you to notice what actually went right. Number 3, what do I need right now to move forward? Not what should I have done, but what do I need now? Rest? A do-over? Help? Permission to try again tomorrow. It's simple as that. Now, how to use it? Set a daily reminder. Phone, alarm, a sticky note, whatever works. Use it when you catch yourself in negative self-talk. Write it down. I mean, keep it visible. Keep it where you can see it. Now, here's a quick little walkthrough. Let's say you forgot to pay a bill again. The old pattern is like, I'm so responsible. I can't even handle basic adult stuff. What's wrong with me? The grace check-in kind of changes it. What would I say to a friend? Would I say this to a friend? No. You say like, hey, this happens, man. Let's set up an auto pay, and it's one less thing to remember. Like, what did I do right today? I noticed I missed a bill, and I'm handling it now. That's responsible. What do I need to move forward? Auto pay, setup, and a reminder system, and there's no shame. So you institute all 3 parts. Now, grace in action, what it could look like. Say as a parent, you lose your temper. Grace equals apologizing to your kid. Now, I'm going to stress this because I really can't stress this enough. A lot of times when we mess up with our kids, we really think we're too big. And I don't even think it's really we're too big. I think it's just shame. You're really embarrassed to actually have to humble yourself to your kid. To be like, man, I messed up. A lot of parents, it's like the egos are so fragile that you can't bring yourself to say I'm sorry to your kid. And I'm from the Caribbean. I know a lot of Caribbean parents who is like, you just gonna have to eat that, whatever that was. I think mine were better. I mean, I might be romanticizing the memories. I think, I don't know. I can't have too. I can't say I have too many moments where, I was in the right when they were wrong. I just can't. I don't have too many of those moments. But I think my parents were cool. They tried to create a safe environment where you could talk. So that kind of worked out for me in a sense, because here's an interesting contrast. And I know I'm going off on a tangent, but just walk with me a little bit. In my family, we do talk. We talk a lot. But in our talking, we really don't say much. Like, we're getting better at it as we're older, but we really spend a lot of time talking around things instead of talking to them. And I'm going to contrast that to my wife's family, who are like super direct, like hurt your feelings direct. But at least from a self-esteem perspective, as a kid, I always thought I had a voice and I could bring stuff to my parents. I because they created that environment where you could speak, even though sometimes a lot of things that needed to be said didn't actually get said, but you could speak. I remember, I'm not getting too much into my business. I guess this might have been my ADHD brain. So as a kid, I used to cut school a lot. And I got in trouble a lot over it. And I actually ended up getting expelled from high school. And I remember the day that I got expelled, which was a weird story in and of itself, because let me break this down for you. I thought it was unjust and I thought it was unreasonable. You guys let me know in the comment section whatever you feel about this. I had a best friend and he and I did everything together. right? And one day we're in class, his name gets called over the loudspeaker, the PA system, XYZ, report to the principal's office. And I'm just like, ooh, what happened? So I immediately, like, I got up, I walked out of my class, I met up with him in the hallway, and I'm like, what'd you do? He's like, I don't know. And I'm just like, all right, you want me to come with you? He's like, yeah. So I went down to the principal's office with him, and the principal basically says, like, in a matter of fact, no gray area, whatever space, just like, hey, write a letter to XYZ's parents, letting them know that, we're expelling him from the school, blah, blah, blah. I was like, dang. So I'm there looking at him like, dude, that's kind of rough. And then the principal says to the secretary, like, oh, drawing up for Mr. Maxwell too. I'm like, what I didn't do anything. Like, oh my goodness. And I remember in that moment, I wasn't even afraid. Like, I went home that day and I told my parents what happened. It wasn't even a thing. Like, it wasn't a thing. It wasn't like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm like, I'm so scared or whatever. Like, I had that space. I guess I would say my parents gave us a lot of grace that we could, like, come to them with anything. And here's another thing my parents actually gave grace to me, which is, I guess, why it's easier for me to give it to people than give it to myself. So during high school, like, I started, like, smoking weed. And in my weed smoking, my parents are from the Caribbean. They know what marijuana smells like. They do. They said nothing. And me and my dumb self, I'm like, I'm coming home. Before I get to the house, like at the train station, I'm spraying cologne. I'm like, my hands, I'm putting on lotion, all that kind of stuff. Let me tell you something. This is to anyone who smokes weed, cigarettes, whatever. It gets into the fabric of your clothes. No cologne, nothing covers that up. It gets into your pores. It gets into your hair. Like, it's on you. You're not fooling anyone. You're not hiding anything from anyone. People are just being kind or indifferent. I don't even know what they're being. Depends on your relationship with whomever you're trying to hide it from. But my parents were just like, they said nothing. They said nothing. And I swore for years that I'd gotten away with it. Because it really wasn't a long period of time. It was literally like a couple months. And I think what happens is, because this is the I guess the environment that my parents created that I'm really grateful for to this day. What happened was, after a couple months, I stopped. So I think they kind of, when I started coming home, not smelling like the stuff, they were like, all right, that's done. We don't even have to think about it. You know what I mean? They didn't confront me. They kind of knew they had done their job. And, parents tell kids don't use drugs and all that kind of stuff. They did that, but your kids are going to do what they're going to do. And, that's, I guess, we got to give them grace. And I think what makes it easier for us to really give people grace is when we give ourselves grace. Because I say this, when it comes to my daughter, I have a concept, which is, my kid is going to be everything that I was and a little bit more, meaning a little more challenging, meaning if I thought I was doing bad things, my kid is going to do things a little bit worse. And if I'm honest with myself about who I was at those stages, at those ages, there's nothing she can do that's, one, going to surprise me, that's, two, going to disappoint me. Because at the end of the day, she's literally doing the same things that I did. So my daughter and I have a really good relationship now. It wasn't always so because, again, like I said, I made a lot of mistakes and I've given myself grace over it. But we have a great relationship now. My daughter can come to me and tell me anything. And literally, she tells me anything. And I'm proud of that because I kind of just mirrored what it is my parents provided for me, which was a safe space. So between my daughter and I, there's no TMI. Though there are times I want to say it. There are times I want to say it because they're just conversations a father does not want to have with his daughter, whether she's an adult or not. But I listen. We talk openly. She always seeks me out when she wants advice. She wants my opinion. And she values my opinion. So she calls me all the time when she needs advice with stuff. So um, wrapping that back up into grace, giving yourself grace, and giving grace to others. I think it's easier to give yourself grace. I think it's easier to give others grace when you give yourself grace. So, bringing it back to, because this was literally an ADHD tangent, if y'all haven't figured that out. When you lose your temper with your kids, grace equals apologizing. And then, you repair the moment and you don't spend days hating yourself. With work or ADHD, you miss a deadline, and grace equals you communicate, you problem solve, and you adjust whatever systems you're using, and you don't spiral into that, I'm a failure, I'm a mess up talk. You just don't do it. And in relationships, you forget, an important date. Grace equals own it, make it right, and forgive yourself for being human. But let me tell you, because see, hindsight is a beautiful thing. Now I have the benefit of hindsight. For years, many years when I was younger, like I couldn't understand for the life of me how I just couldn't keep people's dates in my head, like birthdays, anniversaries, stuff like that. I'd always get in trouble. Like I just couldn't do it for some reason. It just didn't stick. And people will always remember my birthday, and I'd feel like, I'd really be like, what's wrong with me? So I actually started giving myself cover in advance. When I met someone new and I felt that they were going to be important, I kind of gave them a heads up, be like, listen, birthdays aren't my thing. They're not really a big deal. I'll tell you right now, I'm not good with dates. So, I might, don't hold it against me if I miss it. I kind of would put that up there. And then I have an interesting story about that. See, somewhere along the line in my youth, one of my primary care providers, I don't know if it was my mom or my dad. I'm going to put it on my dad because my mom checked me about it once. So I'm going to say it was probably my dad. Somebody in my family did me wrong, and I'm going to tell you what it was. So my birthday is November 18th, right? Somehow, some way, I got it into my head that my birthday was the 19th. The 19th instead of the 18th. So there was this weird thing where for I want to say maybe a couple years, I thought my birthday was the 19th. And there's this running joke with some of my friends, like people who've known me in those periods of time, was like, I'll get a happy birthday on the 18th and I'll get a happy birthday on the 19th. Or sometimes someone will just crack a joke. And it's all good now. Back then it wasn't, but it's all good now. So here's what happened, right? Here's what my mom got me. So my mom is the one who broke the cycle of chaos in that, and who extended some clarity. Get that? Chaos, clarity. So she wished me a happy birthday on the 18th, and I was like, my birthday's tomorrow, and I'm like on it. I'm like, how could you? How dare you? How could you forget my birthday? My birthday is the 19th. My mother looked me in my face. And the way my mother looked at me kind of just rewired my brain completely. Everything reset. All of a sudden, all the neurons connected properly. And then I knew in my very spirit, in my body, in my being, that my birthday was the 18th of November. We've never had that conversation again. It's never come up. I don't know who did it. I'm blaming my pops. I'm blaming my pops. I don't know who did it, and I don't know how it happened. But somehow it happened, and excuse me, somehow it happened and my birthday got switched. But let's go back to that whole forgetting important dates, So yes, with grace, you own it and you make it right, and you forgive yourself for being human. Now, when it comes to self-care, those of us who are getting more physically fit, if you skip the gym for a week, grace equals start again tomorrow without I've already ruined it, because it's almost like what happens with us with our New Year resolutions. We get going and we're good and we have that momentum for the first week, for the second week, for the third week, and then we fall off. And then we're so hard on ourselves for falling off, we don't even try. We just, it's like, I'll try again next year. Instead of like, you know what, I'll try again tomorrow. And it doesn't have to be a big ask. It doesn't have to be like, I'm going to go to the gym 365 days out of the year. It doesn't even have to be, I'm going to the gym 4 days a week for the rest of the year. Let it be like, listen, if I can get to the gym 1 day this week, that's a win. But that's grace. Yeah, like you give yourself grace. There's who you want to be, and there's who you are. And then there's that space in the middle. And grace is that wiggle room where you get to be, you get to travel from where you are to where you want to go. Grace is that space. So we got to give ourselves grace, and then there are rippling effects that occur because of that. When you give yourself grace, you model it for your kids. You show up more presence in the relationships that matter because you're not stuck in shame. You build resilience. Grace is not that you didn't get things wrong and you didn't make mistakes. Grace is that you own them and they don't lock you down. There's no shame in it about it anymore. At least not as much. Of course, there's a little bit of shame because it matters. You feel a way. But grace lets you push past the shame and get into where you can repair or try again. Grace does that. So I just want to let you know, here's the truth. You're going to mess up. You're going to forget some things. You're going to lose your temper. Matter of fact, again, later on, I lost my temper, listen. I'm going to say this right now. I love my son, but he has a way of getting me raw on my nerves. And it's a funny thing is as much as he can get me raw is as much as he makes me happy. When you look at his face, when you look at his smile, when he laughs, oh my God, when he laughs, it's infectious. It's the most beautiful thing. It's like music in the house when he laughs. And he loves music. Give a shout out to him. His favorite song is Can You Stand the Rain by New Edition. But when he hears it, he calls it Sunny Days. Y'all know. If y'all know the song, then y'all know. So when he hears that song, it's Sunny Days. A matter of fact, we're taking him to his first concert in February at TD Garden to see New Edition, Boyz II Men, and Tony Braxton. Just giving him a shout out. But that's going to be his first concert. He loves to sing, and here I am going off on a tangent. We're talking about grace, and I'm talking to you guys about myself. Anyway, grace, because I got mad at him again. But, the thing of it is, we're human. We're going to mess up. We're going to really fall short of our own expectations. And that's not a character flaw. Oftentimes, that's just being human. I'm not saying there are not humans with flawed characters, but for the most part, we're not perfect. We're going to mess up, and we got to give ourselves a little grace. And grace isn't about lowering the bar. It's really recognizing that, you're doing hard things with an imperfect brain, limited energy, zero instruction manual, and you're still showing up. So this week, I want you to try the grace check-in. Like when you catch yourself spiraling, ask, would I say this to a friend? And ask yourself, what did I do right today? And also, when you're stuck, what do I need to move forward? And remember, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to keep trying. And that's enough. I'll leave you with this. Something that stuck with me, why I wanted to talk about this. I don't know what episode 3 was supposed to be, but what prompted me for this episode was I do ride share. Like in the evenings, I do like 3 hours a day. This equipment wasn't free. It wasn't. And I don't have it like that. As much as I would love to that day when my reality catches up with my spirit, but right now in this moment, these lights, this equipment, that wasn't free. I swiped that on the Amex, but I got to pay for that. So I'm hustling to do that. That said, I met a young man and he was 18, and he got into the car, and I could feel his heaviness, right? And it concerns me. I'm a parent. I have a daughter who's older than him. I have a son who's younger than him. But he gets in the car and he calls someone, and he just, he tries to talk to them, but he is so consumed. He's so consumed by the heaviness that he can't really talk, and he's just saying like it hurts and whatever. And I'm hearing these words, and I'm just like, wow, what's going on? And he gets off the phone. He says he called him later. Like he cries a little bit. I hear him crying, and I'm trying to mind my business, but the parent in me is like, nah. So I give him a little bit. When he gathers himself, I say to him like, hey, can I ask you 2 questions? And he said, sure. And I said, how old are you? Wow, just thinking about it is making me tear up. I said, how old are you? And he said, 18. And I asked him, I was like, do you know what the word grace means? And he said, kinda. And he gives an explanation, a little summary, kind of has the idea. And I said to him, like, you need to give yourself some grace. You really do. And he starts talking to me about how, his friends tease him because he doesn't have a car, he doesn't have it together or whatever. And I'm just like, man, you're 18. Like the stuff you're worrying about right now, it doesn't matter as much as you think it does. I'm like, wait till you get to my age. You're going to look back at this and laugh. If you even remember it, it's not even going to matter. And, but he was like kind of stuck. And then he disclosed that, as a kid, he experienced some trauma, which made him turn inward. So he's kind of working his way out of that, and I asked him, I was like, well, do you have a therapist? And he says, yes. And I was like, does your therapist talk to you about your self-talk? And he says, yes. So we're having this conversation, and I'm connecting with him, but I'm also checking to make sure he kind of has supports and tools that he's not white knuckling it, because the heaviness that was on this kid was real enough that I, as a father, was like, there's no way I'm letting this young man out of my car without touching him. Not physically, but you know what I mean. So so we spoke, and we had a good 15 minutes, and we're talking, and now he's laughing, and I'm just sharing my experiences with him, like the stuff that I went through as a young person at his age. And I'm letting him know, like, listen, man, you think you got problems? I became a dad at your age. Like, that's, so I talked to him, and we laugh. And by the time like he gets out the car, he's happy and the energy's off of him. And I kind of shared with him that, whatever it is that you do that makes you feel good, if it's a video game, it's movies, whatever it is that you can indulge in that makes you feel good, do that tonight before anything else. Like give yourself a moment, and I told him, like, give yourself some grace, man. You're 18. Like, you're not going to have it all together. And I'm just like, forget Instagram. Like, all your friends on Instagram or Facebook, they're lying. Most of them. Nobody has it together at your age. We're not supposed to. We haven't lived enough life. We don't have enough experience. And that's just the truth of it. So don't be hard on yourself. You got to give yourself some grace. And like, we talked about some other stuff, and I told him, some things that I want him to go look at on Facebook, not on Facebook, on YouTube, look up, some videos that I think he would enjoy that would help him with like some mindset stuff. But in all that, I just want everybody to know, like, he's okay as far as I know. And here's the funny thing about it, right? Why I really enjoyed my conversation with him. If he ever sees this video, dude, I hope you're doing good. I think you should be doing really, really good. I'm glad we met. And I hope that our conversations were as helpful for you as they were for me, because they actually let me go back in time and kind of console myself a little bit again, giving myself more grace for being 18, not having answers, not having it together, and doing what I thought derailed it just whatever. I carried a lot of stuff forward that I'm now letting go because it's not mine to carry. But today, like I really want you guys to know that we don't have to be perfect. We just got to keep trying, you know? And I want you, I'll end with that. We don't have to be perfect. We just have to keep trying. And that's going to be enough. Thanks for being here. And I'll see you next week.